Chapter 8 of Babbitt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mike Vendetti, MikeVendetti.com. Babbitt. By Sinclair Lewis. Chapter 8. The great events of Babbitt Spring were the secret buying of real estate options in Linton for certain street traction officials before the public announcement that the Linton Avenue car line would be expanded, and a dinner, which was, as he rejoiced to his wife, not only a regular society spread, but a real sure-enough highbrow affair, with some of the keenest intellects and the brightest bunch of little women in town. It was so absorbing an occasion that he almost forgot his desire to run off to Maine with Paul Riesling, though he had been born in the village of Catawba. Babbitt had risen to that metropolitan social plane on which hosts have as many as 4 people at dinner without planning it for more than an evening or two. But a dinner for 12, with flowers from the florist and all the cut glass out, staggered even the Babbitts. For 2 weeks they studied, debated, and arbitrated the list of guests. Babbitt marveled. "Of course we're up to date ourselves, but still, think of us entertaining a famous poet like Chum Frink, a fellow that on nothing but a poem or so every day and just writing a few advertisements pulls down 15,000 berries a year." "Yes, and Howard Littlefield. Do you know the other evening Eunice told me her papa speaks 3 languages," said Mrs. Babbitt. That's nothing. So do I. American, baseball, and poker." "I don't think it's nice to be funny about a matter like that. Think how wonderful it must be to speak 3 languages, and so useful, and with people like that. I don't see why we invite the Orville Joneses."
"Well, now, Orville is a mighty up-and-comin' fellow."
"Yes, I know, but a laundry—"
"I'll admit a laundry hasn't got the class of poetry or real estate, but just the same, Orvie is mighty deep. Ever start him spieling about gardening? Say, that fellow can tell you the name of every kind of tree, and some of their Greek and Latin names, too. Besides, we owe the Joneses a dinner. Besides, gosh, we got to have some boob for audience when a bunch of hot-air artists like Frink and Littlefield get going."
"Well, dear, I meant to speak of this. I do think that as a host you ought to sit back and listen, and let your guests have a chance to talk once in a while."
"Oh, you do you? Sure, I talk all the time, and I'm just a business man. Oh, sure, I'm no Ph.D. like Littlefield, and no poet, and I haven't anything to spring. Well, let me tell you, just the other day your darn chum Frink comes up to me at the club begging to know what I thought about the Springfield School bond issue. And who told him? I did. You bet your life I told him. Little me, I certainly did. He came up and asked me, and I told him all about it. You bet. And he was darn glad to listen to me. Duty as a host. I guess I know my duty as a host, and let me tell you."
In fact, the Orville Joneses were invited. 2. On the morning of the dinner, Mrs. Babbitt was restive. "Now, George, I want you to be sure and be home early tonight. Remember, you have to dress."
I see by the Advocate that the Presbyterian General Assembly has voted to quit the interchurch world movement. That—"
"George, did you hear what I said? You must be home in time to dress tonight."
"Dress, hell! I'm dressed now. Think I'm going down to the office in my BVDs?"
"I will not have you talking indecently before the children. And you do have to put on your dinner jacket."
"I guess you mean my tux. I'll tell you, of all the doggone nonsensical nuisances that was ever invented."
3 minutes later, after Babbitt had wailed,
"Well, I don't know whether I'm going to dress or not,"
in a manner which showed that he was going to dress, the discussion moved on. "Now, George, you mustn't forget to call at Becky's on the way home and get ice cream. Their delivery wagon is broken down, and I don't want to trust them to send it by—"
"All right. You told me that before breakfast."
"Well, I don't want you to forget. I'll be working my head off all day long, training the girl that's to help with the dinner."
"All nonsense anyway, hiring an extra girl for the feed. Matilda could perfectly well.
And I have to go out and buy flowers and fix them and set the table and order the salted almonds and look at the chickens and arrange the children to have their supper upstairs and I simply must depend on you to go to Vecchia's for ice cream.
All right. Gosh, I'm going to get it.
All you have to do is go in and say you want the ice cream that Mrs. Babbitt ordered yesterday by phone, and it will be all ready for you." At 10:30 she telephoned him not to forget the ice cream from Vecchia's. He was surprised and blasted then by a thought. He wondered whether Floral Heights dinners were worth the hideous toil involved. But he repented the sacrilege in the excitement of buying the materials for cocktails. Now this was the manner of obtaining alcohol under the reign of righteousness and prohibition. He drove from the severe rectangular streets of the modern business center into the tangled byways of Old Town, jagged blocks filled with sooty warehouses and lofts, on into the Arbor, once a pleasant orchard, but now a morass of lodging-houses, tenements, and brothels. Exquisite shivers chilled up his spine and stomach, and he looked at every policeman with intense innocence, as one who loved the law and admired the force, and longed to stop and play with them. He parked his car a block from the Healey Hanson saloon, worrying,
Well, rats, if anybody did see me, they'd think I was out here on business.
He entered a place curiously like the saloons of anti-prohibition days, with a long, greasy bar with sawdust in front and streaky mirror behind, a pine table at which a dirty old man dreamed over a glass of something which resembled whiskey, and with two men at the bar drinking something which resembled beer, and giving that impression of forming a large crowd which two men always give in a saloon. The bartender, a tall, pale Swede with a diamond in his lilac scarf, stared at Babbitt as he stalked plumply up to the bar and whispered,
"I'd friend of Hanson sent me here. Like to get some gin?"
The bartender gazed down on him in the manner of an outraged bishop.
"I guess you've got the wrong place, my friend. We sell nothing but soft drinks here."
He cleaned the bar with a rag which would itself have done with a little cleaning, and glared across his mechanically moving elbow. The old dreamer at the table petitioned the bartender.
"Say, Oscar, listen."
Oscar did not listen.
Say, Oscar, listen, will you? Say, listen."
The decayed and drowsy voice of the loafer, the agreeable stink of beer dregs, threw a spell of initiation over Babbitt. The bartender moved grimly toward the crowd of two men. Babbitt followed him as delicately as a cat, and wheedled,
"Say, Oscar, I want to speak to Mr. Hanson."
"What you want to see him for?"
"I just want to talk to him. Here's my card."
It was a beautiful card, an engraved card, a card in the blackest black and the sharpest red, announcing that Mr. George F. Babbitt was estates, insurance, rents. The bartender held it as though it weighed 10 pounds, and read it as though it were 100 words long. He did not bend from his episcopal dignity, but he growled,
"I'll see if he's around."
From the back room he brought an immensely old young man, a quiet, sharp-eyed man in tan silk shirt, checkered vest hanging open, and burning brown trousers. Mr. Healey Hanson. Mr. Hanson said only, "Yeah?" But his implacable and contemptuous eyes queried Babbitt's soul, and he seemed not at all impressed by the new dark gray suit for which, as he had admitted to every acquaintance at the athletic club, Babbitt had paid $125.
"Glad to meet you, Mr. Hanson. Say, I'm George Babbitt of the Babbitt Thompson Realty Company. I'm a great friend of Jake Offutt's."
"What of it?"
"Say, I'm going to have a party, and Jake told me you'd be able to fix me up with a little gin."
In alarm, in obsequiousness, as Hanson's eyes grew more bored,
"You telephone to Jake about me if you want to."
Hanson answered by jerking his head to indicate the entrance to the back room, and strolled away. Babbitt, melodramatically, crept into an apartment containing 4 round tables, 11 chairs, a brewery calendar, and a smell. He waited. Thrice he saw Healey Hanson saunter through, humming, hands in pockets, ignoring him. By this time Babbitt had modified his valiant morning vow.